how much more do you enjoy doing something that you feel you're good at? I think most of us would much rather do something that we're good at than to take a chance and start to learn something new. And that's one of the hardest things about learning a new language, is that we're so good at speaking the language that we speak or the other languages that we've already learned. And it really pushes us to get outside of that comfort zone, to be a beginner again, to struggle with very simple things again. I think one of the hardest things about learning another language is the question of competence. We don't feel like we can really speak. And even more so, we put the idea that we need to be perfect, that we need to sound like a native speaker, that we need to be really good before we can speak. We put all of these expectations on ourselves, which makes it even harder. So is it any wonder that sometimes we have difficulty speaking? Because we don't feel like we're good. But I want us to question and think about today the importance of competence and confidence. Feeling good makes you feel better about yourself. Feeling like you can do something makes you feel better about yourself. Feeling better about yourself gives you more confidence to do it and makes you feel even better. So it's so important that we recognize, first of all of the things that we can do, rather than focus on the things that we can't. And in language learning, that's often very difficult because we focus on what we can do in our native language and what we can't do in our non-native language. But we need to get out of that paradox. We need to get out of that binary where we say this is good and this is bad. We need to try to stop being the person we are in our native language in our non-native language. We need to recognize that our competence comes with practice. The more action we do, the more competent we become, and the more confident we become. And therefore, we get better and better and better. But we only get better with action. And we can't expect to be perfect because we're never perfect. We're imperfectly perfect. And that is perfect. We're imperfectly perfect. And making mistakes is part of the process. Being competent is making mistakes. Being competent does not mean being perfect. And being competent means having our stamp, means having our accent, having our history, being ourselves. That is competence. And we need to embrace that and be confident and proud of our competence, of all we can do and say in the language, rather than all of the things we can't. We need to be proud and feel competent to know what we know. And also know that there are many things we don't know. And we have the ability to learn them. I think competence is difficult to measure. And it is very relative. And that's why it's so important for us to consciously define competence for ourselves. For us to consciously say, no, I'm not going to define competence as being good enough when I speak perfectly, when I sound like a native. No, competence is when I get my idea across, when I sound like me, when I'm able to put my voice out there, when I'm able to do what I need to do. We can put different definitions on it. And we also have a scale of competence. The better we become, we feel more competent. But we need to recognize the competence and the level of competence we have now. We do not need to be perfect, nor a native speaker, to be competent. And actually, it's so important to not try to be a native speaker. In order to illustrate competence, I want to celebrate an amazing person, Luciano Liains. Luciano I've known for about 4 years now. And what an amazingly competent person. He's one of the best piano players I've ever met in my life, and he plays many other instruments as well. He's an incredibly inspirational and soulful musician. He's been voted the best blues piano player in Brazil and won so many awards and played all over the world. And so when I met him, he was already incredibly competent, an incredibly confident, talented, wonderful musician. And he was developing his new album, which he writes and he sings in English. So we worked to work on his pronunciation, but never to take it away from him. But his type of music is different. He plays blues and New Orleans blues. So he has played in New Orleans for so many times, and he's so involved in the jazz and blues scene in New Orleans. So when he writes and he speaks in English, it has a touch of that. And his English is quite different than mine, not because he's Brazilian, but because he learned English in New Orleans. And when he writes music, it needs to reflect that, and it does. And that's what's so important. He may not sound exactly like someone from the US, but he shouldn't sound exactly like someone from the US. And he sounds like himself, and he's creating an entirely new genre, Brazilian blues, mixing all of what's beautiful in New Orleans blues and jazz and beautiful pieces of music from the south of Brazil. And that's amazing. And he couldn't do that if he weren't himself and if he weren't recognizing what he knows and getting better and better every day. He's an incredibly competent person, and yet he's one of the people I know who studies the most. He's always playing. He's always practicing. He's always studying, and he's always asking me different questions to get better and better and better. Just because he's incredibly competent doesn't mean that he can't learn and get better and better and better. And I want Luciano to I want to celebrate all of his amazing accomplishments. One of the best albums of the year in 2016, and I don't know, playing concerts all over the world and tours all over the world, and wow, the list of his accomplishments go on and on. But more than just those accomplishments, I really want to celebrate his ability to get better and better and better, and always strive to become more than he already is. It's an amazing example, an amazing example. And I want to say congratulations, Luciano. And thanks for letting me be a part of your amazing story of success. And with that, I invite you to recognize the competence that you have and to strive every day to become more and more competent. To recognize all of the skills that you do have in language and nonetheless get better and better, and challenge yourself to get better and better each day and still be proud of all that you can do. With that, thank you so much. Have a wonderful week. Have a wonderful day and a wonderful afternoon. Much light, much love. See you next week. Ciao, ciao.